A man crashes on a world ruled by apes and spends 2 hours desperate to get home. And then, on a beach, he discovers he never left. It is one of the most famous endings in movie history, and it was never in the book. The story of how it got there runs straight through one of the darkest chapters Hollywood ever lived through. Planet of the Apes 1968 is remembered for one shattering image. Charlton Heston on his knees in the surf, screaming at a half-buried Statue of Liberty. But behind that ending sits a tangle of true stories. The film never advertised an ending invented from scratch, a screenwriter the studios had tried to erase, an Academy Award handed to the wrong man, a makeup test that saved the whole production, and a joke nobody meant to keep. We're gonna go through them one by one, and unlike the usual versions of this story online, every single one of them is real. This is the missing frame of Planet of the Apes. Number 1. The ending that wasn't in the book. The Statue of Liberty, the gut punch that tells Taylor, and us, that this alien planet was Earth all along, does not appear anywhere in Pierre Boulle's original 1963 novel. Boulle ended his story with a completely different twist. His travelers escape the ape planet and fly home to Earth, only to find that it, too, has fallen under the rule of apes. The half-buried statue on the beach was invented for the film, and it came from a very particular mind. Rod Serling, the creator of the Twilight Zone, wrote the earliest screenplays and gave the story its now legendary final shock. By most accounts, Serling labored through draft after draft, hammering the ending into the perfect Twilight Zone sting. The hero, realizing that the monstrous alien world he has been fighting to escape was his own home all along, ruined by human hands. So the most famous twist in science fiction cinema isn't adapted from anything. It was built from nothing for the screen. Boulle himself had thought his novel unfilmable, and by several accounts was astonished at how powerfully the screen version turned out to work. Number 2, the screenwriter Hollywood had tried to erase. Serling wrote the ending, but the finished film structure and much of its dialogue owed just as much to a second writer, Michael Wilson. And Wilson's name carried a heavy history. A few years earlier, he had been one of Hollywood's most respected screenwriters. He had already won an Academy Award for his screenplay for the acclaimed drama A Place in the Sunday. And then he was called before the House Un-American Activities Committee during the Red Scare, refused to inform on his colleagues, and was blacklisted, barred in practice from working under his own name in the very industry that had honored him. So when Wilson worked after that, he often worked in the shadows uncredited, or hidden behind a front who lent their name to his scripts. That a blacklisted writer helped shape a story about a society that puts the wrong people on trial for thinking the wrong thoughts is one of the richest ironies in all of Hollywood history. And as we'll see, it was almost certainly no accident. Number 3, the Oscar that went to the wrong man. To grasp how strange Wilson's situation was, look at what happened a decade earlier with The Bridge on the River Kwai. That film won the Academy Award for its screenplay, but the two men who actually wrote it, Michael Wilson and Carl Foreman, were both blacklisted, so their names were stripped from the picture entirely. The credit, and the Oscar itself, were handed instead to the author of the original novel, a French writer who, by several accounts, could barely speak English and had not written the screenplay at all. His name was Pierre Boulle. The very same Pierre Boulle who would later write the novel Planet of the Apes. So the man whose book gave us the apes had already, years before, been handed an Academy Award for words a blacklisted writer truly wrote. It took until 1984, long after Wilson had died, for the Academy to finally correct the record and restore his name to the award he had earned. Number 4, and this is where it comes home. If you've followed this channel for a while, you'll know that one of the most celebrated films we have ever covered is Lawrence of Arabia. Michael Wilson, the same blacklisted writer working quietly on Planet of the Apes, was also one of the principal writers of Lawrence of Arabia. There too, for years, his contribution went formally unrecognized. His name kept off the credits because of the blacklist and only restored to the film decades later. So, the same erased screenwriter stands behind The Bridge on the River Kwai, behind Lawrence of Arabia, and behind the Ape Tribunal that condemns Taylor for the crime of being a thinking man. Three monuments of cinema and one name the industry spent years pretending wasn't there. Once you know it's him, Planet of the Apes stops looking like a clever monster movie and starts looking like something closer to a message in a bottle. Number 5. The trial that plays like a witch hunt. Watch the tribunal scene again with Wilson's history in mind. Taylor stands accused before a panel of orangutans who have already decided he is guilty, who refuse to hear evidence that threatens their beliefs, and who are plainly more frightened of an uncomfortable truth than of any lie. To many viewers and critics, it reads as a thinly veiled portrait of the very committees that destroyed careers like Wilson's during the Red Scare, a courtroom where the verdict comes first and the questions exist only to humiliate. Now, we should be careful here. The filmmakers never spelled this out, and a great story can hold many meanings at once. But given who helped write it, and given what had been done to him, it becomes very hard to watch that hearing as nothing more than a science fiction set piece. The apes were never really the target. We were. Number 6. The screen test that got the whole film made. For years, no studio would touch Planet of the Apes. The problem was simple and damning. Everyone was terrified that talking apes would look ridiculous, and that audiences would burst out laughing in all the wrong places. Finally, the head of 20th Century Fox, Richard Zanuck, agreed to pay for a single makeup test and promised that if it convinced him, he would greenlight the picture. So they shot a short test scene from one of Serling's drafts, using early versions of the ape makeup built by John Chambers and the legendary Ben Nye. Charlton Heston played the astronaut. And in the role of the orangutan Dr. Zaius sat a genuine screen legend, Edward G. Robinson, the snarling tough guy star of 100 gangster pictures buried under the very first Zaius mask. Two then unknown contract players, James Brolin and Linda Harrison, played the chimpanzees. Harrison, as it happened, was the girlfriend of the studio chief himself, Richard Zanuck, and she would go on to play Nova, the mute human woman, in the finished film. The test worked. The ridiculous suddenly looked real, and the film got made. Number 7. The original Dr. Zaius, who walked away. Edward G. Robinson had helped sell the film with that test, but he never played the role in the finished movie. The ape makeup of the late 1960s was a brutal thing to wear. Hours in the chair every morning, hot, heavy appliances glued to the face, eating lunch in front of a mirror just to find your own mouth. All of it under the blazing desert sun. Robinson, by then in fragile health, decided he simply could not survive a full shoot trapped inside it and bowed out. The part of Dr. Zaius went instead to the distinguished Shakespearean actor Maurice Evans. As for Robinson, he made only a handful more films, and his very last, a few years later, was the science fiction classic Soylent Green, in which he appeared once again opposite Charlton Heston. Two old friends, who had first shared the screen back in the Ten Commandments, quietly bookending their long careers together in the future shock genre. Number 8. The makeup that won an Oscar all its own. John Chambers' ape designs weren't merely convincing, they changed the craft forever. His real breakthrough was building appliances that still let the actors act, that let you read Roddy McDowall's warmth as Cornelius, Kim Hunter's tenderness as Zira, the flickers of fear and cunning behind Maurice Evans' Dr. Zaius. Audiences didn't just accept the apes, they felt for them, which had never really been done before. The Academy had no regular award for makeup at the time. That category wouldn't even exist until the 1980s, so it did something rare and special. It handed Chambers an honorary Academy Award, specifically for his achievement on this film. It was only the second time the Academy had ever singled out makeup at all. Every morning, dozens of artists spent hours turning the cast into a living, breathing civilization of apes. The operation was enormous, reportedly consuming a sizable share of the film's entire budget, with the makeup teams working in shifts from before dawn so the cameras could roll on time. It was, quite literally, an award-winning illusion built one face at a time. Number 9. The joke nobody meant to keep. There's a small, sly moment in the tribunal scene that fans have treasured for decades. The 3 orangutan judges, for a single beat, strike the poses of the famous see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil monkeys, one covering its eyes, one its ears, one its mouth. It's a perfect visual punchline, slipped into the film's most serious scene. And by the accounts of the people who actually made it, it was never supposed to be in the movie at all. The director, Franklin Schaffner, dreamed it up as a gag during a rehearsal. Heston suggested they shoot it anyway, just as something fun for the dailies, fully expecting it to be thrown away. Somehow, it slipped past every round of editing and ended up in the finished picture. By several accounts, both Heston and Schaffner were genuinely surprised and a little dismayed to find their throwaway jokes sitting there in the final cut. Today, it is one of the most quoted shots in the entire film. Number 10, the line he could barely speak. "Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape." It is one of the most quoted lines in all of cinema, and there is a reason it sounds so raw. By several accounts, Charlton Heston was genuinely ill while shooting it, fighting a heavy throat infection, his voice gone hoarse and ragged. Rather than wait for him to recover, the filmmakers simply used it. That torn, furious rasp gave the line a desperation no healthy voice could have faked. There was a second battle over Taylor's words, too. His final cry, "God damn you all to hell," risked colliding head-on with the old Hays Code rules on profanity. The way the filmmakers reportedly saved it was beautifully simple. They argued it wasn't a curse at all. Taylor, they said, was literally and sincerely calling on God to damn the human race for what it had done to the world. A loophole of pure logic, and so one of the great closing lines in movie history survived. Number 11, the alien world that was Earth all along in more ways than one. Two craftsmen did extraordinary work making this planet feel genuinely other. The first was composer Jerry Goldsmith, whose score threw out almost everything audiences expected from a Hollywood adventure. There are no soaring, heroic themes here. Instead, Goldsmith built an eerie, percussive, almost tuneless soundscape, reportedly banging on unusual objects, even stainless steel mixing bowls and a ram's horn, and writing deliberately disorienting, atonal lines to strip away any sense of comfort or place. It is one of the most influential film scores ever written, and it earned an Academy Award nomination. The second craftsman was the landscape itself. The desolate, beautiful, forbidden zone was no studio set, it was the real American Southwest, shot around Lake Powell and the canyons on the Utah and Arizona border. The most alien thing on screen, it turns out, was a quiet corner of the United States all along, which, given the ending, is grimly perfect. And the man directing it all, Franklin Schaffner, would win his own Academy Award just 2 years later for Patton, but it was this strange ape picture that first proved how serious and how resonant science fiction on screen could be. Number 12, the ending that escaped the film entirely. That final image, Heston in the surf, the broken statue rising over him, became so famous that it long ago stopped belonging to the film alone. It has been homaged, parodied, and quoted everywhere by millions of people who have never watched a single frame of the original. Perhaps the fondest tribute of all came from The Simpsons, which turned the whole thing into a gloriously absurd stage musical, Stop the Planet of the Apes, I Want to Get Off, complete with a show-stopping song belted out to Dr. Zaius himself. When a 1968 science fiction twist becomes a Broadway gag on the most popular cartoon in the world, you are no longer looking at a mere movie. You're looking at a piece of the common language. And all of it grew out of an ending that, as we said at the very start, was never in the book invented by a Twilight Zone writer and shaped by a man Hollywood had tried its hardest to erase. 12 true stories behind a film most people remember for a single shot on a beach. Planet of the Apes endures because of that twist, of course, but also because of everything pressing underneath it. A blacklisted writer quietly smuggling his own experience into a story about a society that puts a thinking man on trial. The apes were never really the villains of this film. It was holding a mirror up to its own audience and trusting them, in that last terrible moment on the beach, to recognize the face looking back. That is the real missing frame of Planet of the Apes. Not a lost reel, but a buried meaning. hidden in plain sight for nearly 60 years.